Hi there. This question is from Martin McDonough. And Martin asks, what questions should I ask myself when confronted by a piece of abstract art? Thanks. P.S. My ability to appreciate ends with Picasso at the moment. Well, Martin, anyone else who's puzzled by abstract art? The first thing I would say is that even figurative art, some of the greatest figurative art, contains within it many passages of painting that could be described essentially as abstract in the sense that they don't represent a thing, they represent a feeling, or they represent a feeling more than they represent a thing. The great example of that, in my mind, is the use of drapery. Think of the use of drapery in Renaissance or particularly in Baroque art. Think of Caravaggio painting the dead Virgin Mary in a room surrounded by the apostles, next to a plain bed, the bed on which she's died. And above it, this huge swag of red drapery, which, as a piece of visual description, makes no sense whatsoever in this room. Why would there be this huge swag of drapery? The point is, it's there, I think, to symbolize simultaneously being red. It symbolizes the fact that Christ's blood was mingled with hers in the miracle of the Immaculate Conception and the miracle of the fact that she gave birth to the living God. This was a miracle of blood and spirit, but it also symbolizes, I think, that swag of drapery above her. It symbolizes her soul flying to heaven. Think of the drapery of some of Bernini's saints, which seems almost to dematerialize their bodies, turn them into something more like a candle flame than a human being. So part of my answer is that abstraction, or the use of color or form purely for expressive or primarily for expressive ends, has always been absolutely central to art. It's even there in the cave paintings. They don't just depict the beasts of Stone Age times. They depict the ideas of their spirit. They depict all kinds of belief systems and structures that we can no longer penetrate to, because those people are now so long gone, so distant from us. But the fact is that art throughout the ages has always had this intense expressive center to it. And it was only when a group of artists, several schools or movements of artists in the 20th century, tried to push art completely away from representation, perhaps impelled in that direction by the advances of photography, which seemed to many to have usurped the role of painting and drawing, its traditional role as visual record. It was no longer needed as a visual record anymore. They attempted to actually untether art completely, so to speak, from its photographically representative role. And I say photographically representative because it's still representative. I mean, let me give an example. Well, I've got, first of all, I like this. This is my favorite cartoon for anybody. This was done in the 1960s by, actually, maybe it's earlier, it may be earlier, in 1945. This was done by an artist called Ad Reinhardt, who created purely black, although they're not actually purely black because they're very subtle, monochrome paintings. He created these abstractions in New York in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was pilloried by the conservative art critical establishment, and he fought back because he was also a gifted cartoonist. So here we have, Joe Philistine saying, ha, 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 what does this represent? Pointing to an abstract picture which looks to me rather like a Kandinsky perhaps. But then suddenly the picture comes back to him and says, ha, what do you represent? What do you represent? Well, you represent a blinkered unwillingness to bring yourself to a painting, no matter what it might look like at first sight, and try and fathom or find something in it for you. And I think that goes to the heart of it. And in a way, this question, Martin's question, goes to the heart of all looking at art, which in my opinion is fundamentally a dialogue, in the sense that no painting exists. The painting represents nothing and I represent nothing. But when we come together, when I look at the painting and think about it, then something is represented, partly by the painting and partly by me. And that is what happens. That thing that is represented in that moment of engagement and contact, that is what art is. Now, let me give you an example. Just going to give you one example of an artist whose work seems to me, I mean, okay, I've chosen him partly because he's probably the most famous of the early abstract artists. And secondly, because I believe his work is absolutely full of content, although it's thoroughly abstract. Thoroughly abstract. I keep going back to it. I don't really believe in the term, so I don't like it. But to make my point, oh, sorry. Hang on. I'm trying to show you. Let me see what I'm actually showing you. Sorry, I'm going to stop my share screen, share. Now you should be looking at one of Mondrian's black and white Pier and Ocean paintings. I think it's called number 10. Now these were painted right at the beginning of Mondrian's great leap into the unknown, his great leap into the void, which took place actually on the beach at Scheveningen, which is the same place in Holland where Vincent van Gogh painted his first picture. It's the most atmospheric of places. It's right on the North Sea. It's the place where land meets sea. It can be extremely bleak. I think for Mondrian, when he was painting these pictures, it's done in 1915, during the World War I, during a time of massive loss of life. And he's staring into the unknown. He's taking painting somewhere new. And yet, even as he does it, even as he is sort of moving towards what will later become his characteristic grid form way of painting, he seems to me to be very much tethered in his own time, because, you know, what does this look like? What does this look like? It looks like a First World War graveyard, does it not? So yes, it's abstract, but it's also got a kind of melancholy about it, and a sense of the infinite that is perhaps tinged with sadness, that so many young men are being drawn into their own version of the infinite rather too soon for their years. And if we move, I'm just going to see if I can find my last Mondrian, or my second Mondrian. Let me move it so you can see it. This is composition in red, blue, and yellow. And this is in the 1930s. And this is Mondrian, I think, attempting to give expression to a profound spiritual belief, his profound spiritual belief in the idea of human perfectibility, which in his mind was associated with new movements in design, new trends in hygiene, in city design. He was a great embracer of the modern. And these paintings, which are made of almost nothing at all, I mean, they're just made of, anybody could buy the paint and buy the canvas of which such pictures are made, and they could try themselves to make one. But I challenge you, could you make one that seems to shimmer and float and hover on the wall with such transcendent beauty as this? It's the idealism that lies behind it that gives it that sense of the spiritual. I mean, to me, I look at that and I find that moving, just that red. I find that red moving. It speaks to me. It says stop. And it says, just like a red traffic light, it says stop, look at me, take time, think how much better, how much more beautiful, how much more pure this world could be. And that, in a sense, that red square is every bit as charged with feeling as that piece of red drapery in the non-abstract figurative painting by Caravaggio, which I began by talking about. There's no answer really, Martin, to your question, but I hope, all I can try to do, I think, it's what I see, when I'm broadcasting, as it were, is I try to open a door, try to help you to, and if you find nothing in the pictures, and if, when you say, what do you represent, the picture doesn't talk back to you, then I've failed, okay. Or maybe you failed, huh? Who knows? But good luck and continue to enjoy art. And I hope this has been helpful. Yeah, do keep the questions coming along. And anybody who's enjoyed this, do please become a full member of the website, and you can see many, many more films and videos. Thank you for watching. Cheers.